The boardroom on the 43rd floor of Sterling Properties had floor-to-ceiling windows that framed Chicago like a postcard. Lake Michigan stretched gray and restless beyond the glass. 12 board members sat around a mahogany table that cost more than most people's cars. At the head of the table, Bradford Whitmore stood. 62 years old, silver hair, perfectly styled suit tailored to hide the softness around his middle. His voice carried the certainty of a man who had never been told no. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to address a crisis of leadership. Cameras clicked. A reporter from the Tribune shifted in the corner pen, moving across her notepad. This was supposed to be a routine quarterly meeting. Bradford had made sure it became something else. 60 days ago, our CEO, Sloan Ashford, entered into a marriage with a man she had known for less than 72 hours. Bradford's voice dripped with practiced concern. A homeless security guard with a sealed military record and gaps in his employment history that raised serious questions. Sloan Ashford sat perfectly still. 58 years old, silver hair cut sharp at her jawline, hands folded on the table. Her face revealed nothing. 2 decades of negotiating billion-dollar deals had taught her that much. I move for an immediate vote of no confidence. That's when every eye in the room turned to the man standing near the window. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back. Military posture, spine straight, shoulders squared. Donovan Gaines. 34 years old, 6 feet tall, skin the color of strong coffee. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him well enough to suggest someone had cared about the details. His face was unreadable. The morning sun behind him made his features hard to see clearly, but his eyes, dark, steady, patient, missed nothing. Bradford pointed at him like he was evidence in a criminal trial. This man. The image froze. Donovan's face, half in shadow, half in light. The boardroom suspended in that awful moment before everything changes. A single line of text appeared across the screen. 60 days earlier. The eviction notice was printed on pale yellow paper. Donovan's hands didn't shake when he held it, but they should have. His body had learned discipline a long time ago. 14 years in the Marine Corps. 3 tours in Afghanistan. A Purple Heart he kept in a sock drawer because looking at it hurt too much. His hands knew how to stay steady when rockets screamed overhead. They could stay steady for this. He sat in the property manager's office on a Thursday afternoon. Marcus Webb sat across from him, looking everywhere except at Donovan's face. The office smelled like burnt coffee and printer toner. I'm sorry, Donovan. I really am. The notice gave him 14 days. 14 days to find $3,000 he didn't have. 14 days to find a new place to live in a city where studio apartments cost more than he made in a month. 14 days before his daughter would be homeless. I know you gave me extensions before, Donovan said. His voice was quiet, controlled. I appreciate that. Marcus finally met his eyes, guilt written all over his face like graffiti. You got family, someone who could help. Donovan thought about his sister Shayna in Atlanta. 3 kids of her own. A husband working 2 jobs. Living paycheck to paycheck just like everyone else who played by the rules and still couldn't get ahead. We'll figure it out. He folded the notice and put it in his jacket pocket. Stood up. Shook Marcus's hand because that's what you did. You didn't make other people feel worse for doing what they had to do. Outside, October wind cut through his jacket. Chicago in autumn. The city where he was born, where he'd proposed to Lisa 8 years ago, where she'd died 4 years ago, leaving him with a 9-year-old daughter and medical bills that swallowed every dollar he earned. Donovan walked 6 blocks to the bus stop. He had 2 hours before his shift started at the warehouse. Night security, minimum wage plus 50 cents. He'd picked up 2 other part-time jobs in the last year, morning deliveries for a bakery, weekend maintenance at a church. 3 jobs, 70 hours a week. And it still wasn't enough. The bus was late. It was always late. He stood at the plexiglass shelter and watched the traffic. BMW sedans heading north toward the good neighborhoods. Delivery trucks rumbling south toward the industrial parks. The city moved in patterns you could read if you paid attention. His phone buzzed. A text from Shayna. "How you doing, really?" He typed back. "We're okay." The lie came easy now. Automatic. Like checking your 6 in hostile territory. His back ached. The injury that had ended his military career. 3 vertebrae compressed when an IED flipped his Humvee outside Kandahar. He could still walk, still work, but some days the pain made him want to scream. He took ibuprofen like candy. 4 pills 3 times a day. It barely touched it. The bus finally came. He found a seat in the back next to a woman who smelled like cigarettes and vanilla perfume. He closed his eyes and let the motion of the bus rock him. 14 days, he had $387 in his checking account. Rent was $2,000. The eviction notice in his pocket felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Rosie's Diner sat on South Halsted between a check-cashing place and a laundromat. Red vinyl booths, black and white checkered floor, a counter with stools that spun if you kicked them right. The smell of coffee and bacon grease had soaked into the walls. Donovan sat in the corner booth, the same booth where he'd proposed to Lisa 8 years ago, where she'd laughed and cried and said yes before he'd even finished the question. He came here sometimes when he needed to think, when the apartment felt too small and his thoughts too loud. Amara sat across from him, 9 years old, wearing a purple hoodie 2 sizes too big. Her school shoes were worn down at the heels. He'd noticed that morning, made a mental note to find money for new ones. Another expense he couldn't afford. She ate her grilled cheese sandwich in small bites. Making it last. When had she learned to do that? When had his daughter learned to ration food like they were under siege? "Dad, you're not eating." She pushed her plate toward him. Half a sandwich left. She always did this now. Pretended she was full. Offered him her food. "I'm good, baby, you eat. You always say that." Her eyes, Lisa's eyes, dark and knowing, studied him with an awareness that broke something inside his chest every time. "You said that yesterday, too, and the day before." Donovan picked up his coffee instead. Black, no sugar. The bitter warmth filled his mouth so he wouldn't have to answer. The waitress was Rosie herself. 70 years old, gray hair, pulled back laugh lines deep around her eyes. She'd stopped charging him full price 3 weeks ago. He pretended not to notice. She pretended it wasn't charity. "You want a refill, honey?" "I'm good, thank you." Rosie looked at Amara, then at Donovan. She'd known them for years, had known Lisa, had given them free pie on their wedding anniversary, had held Donovan's hand at Lisa's funeral and told him he'd get through it. She didn't say anything now, just nodded and walked away. The diner door opened. October wind swept in scattering napkins from the counter. The woman who entered didn't belong here. She wore a charcoal suit that probably cost $2,000. Her silver hair was cut short and sharp. She moved with the kind of confidence that came from never worrying about eviction notices or whether your kid's shoes fit. Donovan watched her scan the diner. Her gaze was systematic, purposeful, like she was searching for something specific. When her eyes landed on him, something changed in her expression. Recognition. She walked straight to his booth. Every instinct from 12 years in the Marines went on alert. Donovan shifted slightly, positioning himself between the stranger and Amara, his coffee cup still in his hand, his body language relaxed but ready. "Donovan Gaines." It wasn't a question. Who's asking? The woman's hand went to her purse. Donovan's muscles tensed, but she pulled out a photograph, set it on the table between them. The image hit him like a fist. He was younger in the photo, desert fatigues covered in soot and blood, his face caught mid-shout veins standing out in his neck, every muscle straining. Behind him, fire and smoke, a Humvee engulfed in flames. He was pulling a man from the wreckage, Kandahar province. March 15th, 2012, the day that changed everything. Do you remember that day, Sergeant Gaines? Donovan's hand stayed steady around his coffee cup, but inside his heart rate spiked. Fight or flight response, adrenaline flooding his system, the smell of burning rubber and flesh. The heat so intense it blistered through his gloves. The screaming, the ammunition cooking off inside the vehicle like hellish popcorn. He remembered everything. Who are you? My name is Sloane Ashford. She paused. Julian Ashford was my son. The diner seemed to tilt. Julian, the Marine Corporal Donovan had dragged from that burning Humvee. The kid from Chicago who talked about his mom's cooking and his college plans, who had 3 more weeks left on his deployment when the IED hit. Julian made it home, Sloane continued. Her composure cracked just for a second. He had 5 more years, got married, started a career, had a life. Her voice steadied again, professional, controlled. Then complications from his injuries caught up with him. He died last year. Amara was watching the adults with wide eyes, her grilled cheese forgotten. I'm sorry for your loss, ma'am. Donovan's voice was quiet, respectful. Julian was a good man, a good Marine. He was my only child. Sloane said it simply. A fact, not asking for sympathy. Before he died, he made me promise to find you, to make sure you were okay. Donovan felt heat creep up his neck. Shame. This elegant woman standing in a diner on the south side looking at him with eyes that saw too much. I'm fine, ma'am. Sloane's gaze moved deliberately around the diner, took in his worn jacket, Amara's small shoes, the way he hadn't ordered food for himself. Mr. Gaines, I didn't spend 2 years and considerable resources tracking you down to exchange pleasantries. She sat down across from him without being invited. Amara scooted closer to Donovan. I know you're 14 days from eviction. I know you work 3 part-time jobs that are destroying what's left of your back. I know your daughter wears shoes 2 sizes too small because you can't afford new ones. The shame turned to anger. Donovan's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed level, calm. You had no right. I know your wife Lisa died 4 years ago from breast cancer. Sloane kept going, relentless. I know you promised her you'd give Amara every opportunity, and I know you're failing that promise right now. She held up a hand before Donovan could speak. Not because you're a bad father, because you're trying to do it alone. We need to leave. Donovan started to stand. Sit down, Sergeant. The command in her voice was pure authority, the kind that came from running a $300 million company, from boardrooms and hostile negotiations. I have a proposition that will sound insane, but I'm asking you to hear me out. For Amara's sake, if not your own. Donovan looked at his daughter. Amara was staring at Sloane with an expression he couldn't quite read. Hope, maybe, or fear, or both. He sat back down slowly. Sloane pulled a business card from her purse, set it on the table next to the photograph. I'm 58 years old. I built sterling properties from nothing after my first husband died. I'm worth approximately $300 million. I have homes in 3 cities and more money than I know what to do with. She paused. I'm also desperately, achingly alone. The vulnerability in those words was stark against her polished exterior. Julian was my only family. Since he died, I've realized something. All the money in the world means nothing if you have no one to share it with. Amara's hand found Donovan's under the table. Small fingers wrapped around his. I don't see what this has to do with us, Donovan said carefully. I'm getting to that. Sloane folded her hands on the table. Her nails were manicured but not flashy. Everything about her spoke of wealth that didn't need to announce itself. Before Julian died, he kept a list of people who'd saved his life, had his back, made a difference. You were at the top. Her eyes met Donovan's. He made me promise that if anything happened to him, I'd find you. Make sure you were taken care of. Donovan's throat tightened. He remembered Julian in the hospital at Bagram, burned and broken but alive. The kid had gripped his hand and said thank you over and over until the morphine pulled him under. So I hired an investigator, Sloane continued. It took time, but I found you, and when I learned about your situation. She trailed off, then straightened her spine. I realized Julian had given me something precious, a purpose, a way to honor his memory that actually means something. What exactly are you proposing? Marriage. The word hung in the air. Somewhere in the kitchen a plate crashed. The sound seemed very loud. Excuse me. Sloane's expression didn't change. A marriage of partnership and mutual benefit. Not love, not romance. A practical arrangement where we both get what we desperately need. Her gaze moved to Amara. Your daughter would have everything. The best schools, healthcare, college fund, every opportunity you want to give her but can't. She looked back at Donovan. You'd have financial security, excellent medical care for your back, and the chance to actually be a father instead of working yourself to death. And what would you get? The question came out harder than he intended. I'd get to be a grandmother. Sloane's voice softened. I'd get family dinners, someone to come home to. I'd get to help raise a child, something I thought I'd lost forever when Julian died. She leaned forward slightly. I'd get purpose again. Donovan felt like he was drowning. This is insane. People don't just, you can't seriously expect, I expect you to think about it. Sloane pulled out her business card, elegant, embossed. I'm staying at the Peninsula Hotel. Call me when you're ready to discuss terms. She stood, placed $200 bills on the table. For Amara's new shoes and dinner for both of you, please. Then she was gone. The scent of expensive perfume lingered. The photograph of Kandahar remained on the table. The business card sat next to it like an accusation. Amara broke the silence. Dad, what just happened? Donovan stared at the money, at the photograph of himself pulling Julian from the flames, at the business card that represented a life he couldn't even imagine. I don't know, baby. His voice sounded distant to his own ears. I honestly don't know. That night after Amara fell asleep on their sagging couch, because their apartment only had one bedroom and he'd given it to her, Donovan sat at the tiny kitchen table. The eviction notice lay in front of him. The business card lay next to it. 2 pieces of paper. 2 different futures. He opened his laptop. The screen flickered to life, casting blue light across his face. He typed Sloane Ashford. The results came immediately. Forbes, Fortune, Business Week. Page after page of articles about a woman who'd built an empire. Net worth estimated at $320 million. Featured in Most Powerful Women in Real Estate. Board member of half a dozen charities. He found an article from 6 months ago. Billionaire recluse Sloane Ashford vanishes from public life after son's death. The photo showed her at a funeral, standing alone at a graveside. Her face was a mask of controlled grief, her hands clenched at her sides. The absolute isolation in that image made his chest ache. He knew what it looked like to stand at a grave and face the future alone. His phone buzzed. A text from Shayna. "How are you doing?" "Really?" Donovan looked around the apartment. The eviction notice, the empty refrigerator, Amara's shoes with the worn-out soles sitting by the door, the bottle of pain pills he was rationing because he couldn't afford the refill. He typed back, "We're okay." The lie came easier every time. But that night, lying in his bed that was really a pulled-out couch, staring at the ceiling with his back screaming and his mind racing, Donovan kept thinking about Sloane's words, "Pride is expensive." And Lisa's final words to him in the hospital, her hand gripping his, her voice barely a whisper. "Give her everything, Donovan. Every opportunity, every chance. Don't let pride stop you from getting her what she needs." At 2 in the morning, he picked up the business card, stared at it for a long time. Then he sent a text to the number printed in neat letters. "Can we talk? I have questions." The response came within minutes. "My sweet, tomorrow at 6 p.m. Bring Amara. She should see what this life could look like." Donovan set the phone down, covered his face with his hands. He wasn't sure if he was making the best decision of his life or the worst mistake. But for the first time in months, he felt something other than desperation. He felt possibility. The Peninsula Hotel lobby made Amara's eyes go wide. Marble floors stretched in every direction. Chandeliers hung from ceilings 2 stories high. Everything gleamed, everything whispered money in a language Donovan had never learned to speak. Amara gripped his hand tighter as they crossed toward the concierge desk. "Dad, this is like a palace." "Yeah, baby, it is." She wore her best dress, the one they'd gotten from Goodwill for school pictures last year. It was getting too small. He could see where the hem had been let out twice. Donovan wore his only suit, navy blue, bought for Lisa's funeral. It still fit, more or less. He'd lost weight in the last year. Stress and skipped meals. The concierge directed them to the penthouse elevator. Private, accessed with a key card. As they rode up, Donovan caught their reflection in the polished brass. He looked tired, worn, older than 34. Amara looked small and nervous in her outgrown dress. They didn't belong here. That much was obvious. The elevator opened directly into Sloane's suite. She was waiting. No power suit today. She wore jeans and a soft blue sweater. Her feet were bare. She looked human, approachable. A golden retriever came bounding over, tail wagging like a propeller. "This is Sergeant," Sloane said. The smile that touched her face was genuine, warm. "He's terrible at being a guard dog, thinks everyone is his best friend." Amara giggled. The sound was bright and unexpected. She knelt down, letting the dog lick her face. It was the first time Donovan had heard her laugh in weeks. "Amara, why don't you and Sergeant explore? There's a game room down the hall with a TV and some books. Help yourself to anything in the kitchen." Once Amara was gone, following the excited dog down a hallway that probably cost more than Donovan's entire apartment building. Sloane gestured to the sitting area. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lake Michigan. The water was dark and restless under the evening sky. "Thank you for coming." Sloane settled into a chair. "I know this is unconventional." "That's one word for it." Donovan remained standing, too wired to sit, every nerve on edge. "I need to understand what you're really proposing, the details." "Fair enough." Sloane pulled out a folder, thick, official-looking. "I had my lawyers draw up a preliminary contract. Obviously, you'd want your own lawyer to review it, which I'd pay for. But here are the basics." She handed him the document. Donovan scanned it. His eyes caught on phrases that seemed surreal. Legal marriage with separate residences initially, or shared residence with separate bedrooms at the discretion of both parties. Full financial support for Amara Gaines, including but not limited to education, healthcare, extracurricular activities, and college fund. Joint custody and parental rights with Sloan Ashford, legally adopting Amara Gaines with Donovan Gaines's full consent and retained rights. In the event of divorce or separation, a settlement of no less than $5 million plus full college fund for Amara Gaines remains intact. His hands shook. This is too much. It's what Julian would have wanted. Sloane's voice was gentle. And Donovan, I'm not doing this purely out of obligation. She leaned forward. I've thought about this carefully. I want family again. I want a child's laughter in my home. I want someone to cook dinner for, to help with homework, to attend school plays. Her eyes were steady, honest. I want purpose. What about me? Donovan met her gaze. What's my role in this? Just the father you're supporting. You're my partner. The word landed between them. Donovan, I'm not trying to save you. I'm trying to build something with you. A family. I don't know how to do that alone. I never had the chance. She stood, moving closer. But you do. You've been an incredible father under impossible circumstances. I need that. I need someone who knows how to love a child unconditionally, who can teach me how to be what Amara needs. From down the hall came Amara's laughter. The dog barked happy and loud. I don't understand why you can't just help us. Why marriage? Sloane was quiet for a moment. Because charity creates obligation and resentment, because I don't want to be the rich lady who helps the poor veteran out of pity. Her voice dropped lower. Because I want this to be real, Donovan. A real family with real commitment. Marriage makes it real. Footsteps. Amara appeared in the doorway, breathless and grinning. Dad, you have to see the game room. It has every console and there are shelves full of books and... She stopped, reading the tension in the room. Sorry, should I go back? No, baby, come here. Donovan held out his hand. When Amara took it, he pulled her close. Ms. Ashford has made us an offer. A big offer. And I need to know how you feel about it. Sloane explained it in simple terms. They'd live together as a family. She'd help take care of Amara. They'd have a nice house and Amara could go to good schools. They'd be partners. Would you be my mom? Amara asked. Sloane's composure cracked. Just for a second. I'd like to be something like that, she said carefully. I can never replace your mom. She'll always be your mom. But I could be someone who loves you and takes care of you too. Amara looked at her father, those dark eyes that saw too much. What do you think Dad? Donovan thought about the eviction notice, about Amara's shoes, about the way his daughter had learned to ration food at 9 years old. About Lisa's final words, give her everything. I think, he said slowly, that sometimes the right choice is the one that sounds craziest. He looked at Sloane. I need conditions of my own. Name them. I contribute. I'm not just someone you support. I work. I help. I'm a real partner. Maybe I can't contribute financially the way you can, but I contribute something. Agreed. Sloane nodded immediately. I'll need help managing properties, overseeing projects. You have construction experience. I could use that. Amara keeps her mother's memory alive. Pictures, stories, everything. You don't try to replace Lisa. I wouldn't dream of it. Sloane's voice was fierce. Lisa gave you Amara. I have nothing but respect for her. And if this doesn't work, if we can't make this function, we separate cleanly. No drama. No fighting. We protect Amara first. Absolutely. Donovan took a deep breath, felt like he was standing at the edge of a cliff. Then I think we have a deal. Sloane's face transformed. For the first time, she smiled fully. Something that had been hidden under all that polish and control broke through. Hope. "There's one more thing," she said. "I'd like to show you both the house where we'd live. It's in Lincoln Park. I think Amara should see it before we make any final decisions." The house was a 3-story brownstone on a tree-lined street where people walked golden retrievers and pushed expensive strollers. It had a yard, an actual yard in Chicago. Inside it was elegant but not cold. Sloane had clearly prepared for this moment. There was a bedroom already set up for Amara, decorated in purples and whites with a window seat overlooking the garden. "Is this mine?" Amara whispered. She touched the bookshelf like it might disappear. "If you want it to be," Sloane said. Amara turned to her father. There were tears in her eyes. "Dad, there's a yard, a real yard." Donovan knelt down, pulled her into a hug. The weight of 4 years of struggle pressed against his chest. 4 years of watching his daughter go without, of choosing between heat and food, of trying so hard and never being enough. "I know, baby. Can we say yes, please?" Over Amara's head, Donovan's eyes found Sloane's. The older woman was crying too. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Yeah, we can say yes." That night in a lawyer's office downtown, Donovan Gaines signed papers that would change everything. Sloane sat beside him. When it was done, when they were legally bound in the strangest partnership either of them had ever entered, she held out her hand. "Partners." Donovan shook it. Her grip was firm, steady. "Partners." They told Amara together back at the hotel suite. Sargent sat between them like a witness. She cried, then laughed, then hugged them both so hard Donovan's ribs ached. "When do we move?" "This weekend," Sloane said, "if that's okay with your dad." Donovan thought about their tiny apartment, the eviction notice, the empty refrigerator. He thought about Lisa and her final wish. He thought about Amara's face when she'd seen that bedroom with the window seat. This weekend is perfect. 3 days later, Donovan carried the last box into the brownstone in Lincoln Park. It was a small box. All their possessions fit in the back of Sloane's SUV with room to spare. That should have been humiliating. Instead, it felt like leaving weight behind. Amara was already in her new room exploring. Sargent followed her everywhere, devoted. Sloane was in the kitchen unpacking groceries she'd ordered, filling cabinets and the refrigerator with more food than Donovan had seen in one place in years. He stood in the doorway watching her work. She'd pulled her silver hair back in a ponytail and rolled up her sleeves. She looked determined, focused, like she was tackling a business acquisition instead of figuring out where to put cereal boxes. "You don't have to do all that," he said. "I can handle it." Sloane looked up. "I know you can, but I want to. Is that okay?" There was something vulnerable in the question, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to care. "Yeah," Donovan said. "It's okay." That first night they ordered pizza, ate in the living room on the floor because the furniture Sloane had ordered wouldn't arrive until tomorrow. Amara sat between them eating slice after slice, not rationing, not worried, just eating like a normal 9-year-old kid. "This is the best pizza I've ever had," she announced. It was just regular pizza, but Donovan understood. It was the first meal in forever where nobody was counting pennies or stretching dollars. It was the first meal where they could just eat. After Amara went to bed in her room with the window seat and the overflowing bookshelf, Donovan and Sloane sat in the living room with coffee. The silence was comfortable. "Thank you," he said finally. "For what?" "For seeing us, for caring, for all of this." Sloane set down her cup. "Thank you for saying yes, for trusting me, for giving me a reason to fill this house with life again." She pulled something from her pocket. A photograph of Julian in his dress blues, young and proud. "I'm doing this for him," she said quietly. But I'm also doing it for me. Is that selfish? No. Donovan thought about Lisa, about promises and grief and second chances. I think it's human. They sat together in the quiet house, two broken people trying to build something whole. And for the first time in a very long time, Donovan Gaines believed that maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. Outside, the city hummed with its endless rhythm, traffic and sirens and life continuing in all its messy complexity. Inside, something new was being born, something fragile and precious. Donovan looked at the woman who had walked into his life with an impossible offer and changed everything. We're really doing this, he said. We really are. And despite the uncertainty, despite the strangeness of it all, Donovan felt something he hadn't felt in 4 years. Hope. The first morning in the Lincoln Park brownstone, Donovan woke at 0500 hours. Muscle memory. 14 years of military discipline didn't fade just because you slept in a house that cost $3 million. His internal clock still ran on combat time. He lay in the guest bedroom, his bedroom now staring at an unfamiliar ceiling. Too high, too clean. The mattress beneath him was the most comfortable thing he'd slept on in years, but it felt wrong. Guilt crept through his chest like smoke. 5 days ago, he'd been signing an eviction notice. Now he lived in a mansion. His back protested as he sat up. The familiar grinding pain, a reminder that some things didn't change no matter how expensive the bed. He'd slept better than he had in months, though. The room was warm, actually warm. He hadn't realized how much the constant chill of their old apartment had affected him until it was gone. Donovan found his way downstairs, moving quietly through rooms he still didn't know. The kitchen was all gleaming counters and appliances he had no idea how to use. He stood in front of an espresso machine, studying it like it was an IED he needed to defuse. It's temperamental, he turned. Sloane stood in the doorway wearing running clothes, her face flushed, silver hair pulled back. She'd clearly been up for hours. Sorry, didn't mean to startle you. You run every morning, 5 miles. She moved past him to the machine, pressing buttons with practiced ease. Started after my first husband died. Needed something to do with the anxiety. The machine hissed and gurgled. She handed him a mug. Regular coffee. Please. They stood in awkward silence while the coffee brewed. Two strangers who'd signed a legal contract to be family. The absurdity of it hung in the air between them. You're up early, she said finally. Military habit, can't seem to shake it. Julian was the same way. Sloane's voice softened. Even years after he got out, he was up before dawn. She paused, then gestured toward a door he hadn't noticed. There's a gym in the basement. Equipment for physical therapy if you want it. I had a trainer stock it based on your medical records. Donovan felt the familiar prickle of discomfort. You read my medical records. I needed to understand your limitations so I could help properly. Is that crossing a line? He wanted to say yes, wanted to be angry about the invasion of privacy, but the practical part of him, the part that had agreed to this whole arrangement, knew she was right. No, he said finally. It's just going to take some getting used to, having someone know everything about me. I can imagine. Sloane sipped her coffee, studying him over the rim of her mug. For what it's worth, I'm not interested in your past, only in making sure the present and future work for all of us. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. Amara burst into the kitchen, Sergeant at her heels, already talking. Dad, did you see my bathroom? It has a tub and a shower, and the towels are so fluffy, and... She stopped, seeing them both. Oh. Hi, Ms. Ashford. Is it okay if I take a bath? I've never had a bathtub before, just the shower in our old place. Amara breathed. Donovan said, but he was smiling. Sloane laughed. The sound was warm, genuine. Of course you can take a bath, sweetheart. Use whatever you want. There's bubble bath in the cabinet under the sink. Really, thank you, thank you, thank you. Amara hugged Sloane impulsively, then seemed to realize what she'd done and pulled back uncertain. Sloane's face did something complicated. Her hand pressed to her ribs where Amara had hugged her. Anytime, honey. After Amara thundered back upstairs, Sloane stood very still. You okay? Donovan asked. I haven't been hugged like that in a very long time. Her voice was thick. Julian stopped spontaneous hugging around age 12. Too cool for it. I didn't realize how much I'd missed it until just now. Donovan saw her clearly in that moment. Not the powerful CEO or the wealthy benefactor, just a woman who'd lost her only child and was desperately lonely. She'll do it again, he said quietly. Fair warning, Amara's a hugger, always has been. Good. Sloane blinked rapidly, then busied herself with refilling her coffee. I should warn you, I have a board meeting today. I'll be gone most of the day. My assistant, Mrs. Rodriguez, will be here at 8 to help with anything you need. And I've arranged for a car service to take Amara to school and pick her up. I can take her to school. Of course you can, but this way you don't have to navigate the bus system with your back. Consider it a convenience, not a replacement. Donovan wanted to argue, wanted to insist he could handle it. But the truth was, his back had been screaming for the last hour. The idea of not wrestling with public transportation was appealing. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Sloane set down her mug. We haven't talked about your role here, the job I mentioned. She pulled out a folder from a drawer. Professional. All business now. I own 17 commercial properties in Chicago. 8 residential buildings, 3 retail spaces, 6 office complexes. I have property managers for each, but I need someone overseeing the managers. Someone who understands construction maintenance safety protocols. She met his eyes. Someone I can trust. Donovan took the folder, opened it. Property assessments, maintenance schedules, tenant complaints, budget reports. The kind of documentation he'd worked with during his construction days. Before the injury, before everything fell apart. You said you had construction background, Sloane continued. I need someone who can visit sites, assess problems, coordinate repairs. It's real work, Donovan. Real contribution. And I'll pay you a real salary. You don't have to. I'm not doing this to make you feel better. I'm doing it because I genuinely need help. She pulled out another document, a detailed organizational chart. My current oversight is minimal and it's costing me money. You'd be saving me money, actually. Plus, it gets you out of the house, gives you purpose, and most importantly, gives you independence. Donovan studied the documents. His mind was already working, seeing patterns, identifying inefficiencies. Old skills waking up. When would I start? Tomorrow if you want. Mrs. Rodriguez will set you up with a company phone email access to all the property files. You can set your own schedule around Amara's needs. She paused. There's a building in Pilsen that's been having heating complaints for 6 months. The property manager keeps saying it's fixed, but tenants keep calling. I'd like you to look at it first. Get me your assessment. Donovan nodded slowly. Something in his chest loosened. Purpose. Direction. A way to contribute that wasn't charity. I can do that. The 3-story walk-up in Pilsen was built in the 1920s. Red brick fire escapes zigzagging down the facade windows that had seen better decades. Donovan met the property manager, Tony Morales, in the lobby. Mr. Gaines. Tony was nervous. That told Donovan everything he needed to know. Ms. Ashford said you'd be coming by. Just here to assess the heating situation. Walk me through it. They climbed stairs that creaked under their weight. Tony talked fast, explaining patches and temporary fixes. But Donovan wasn't listening to the words. He was reading the building. The way heat distribution felt wrong, the sounds the old pipes made, the smell of space heaters running overtime. They reached the second floor. Mrs. Robinson answered her door wrapped in 3 sweaters. 76-years-old black woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much struggle. "Mrs. Robinson, this is Mr. Gaines. He works for Ms. Ashford now. He's here about the heat. About time." Her voice was sharp but not unkind. "I've been calling for months, been sleeping in my coat." Donovan felt anger rise in his chest, controlled it, pushed it down. "May I look at your radiators, ma'am?" She let him in. The apartment was ice cold. Donovan knelt by the radiator, touched the pipes, barely warm. He pulled out a small notebook, something he'd grabbed from Sloane's office that morning, and started sketching. The building's heating system was ancient, barely functional. Tenants had jury-rigged space heaters everywhere, fire hazards waiting to happen. "Are you an engineer?" Mrs. Robinson asked, watching him work. Donovan's pencil paused for just a second. "Something like that." He finished his inspection of 4 more units. The pattern was clear. This wasn't a repair job. This was a full system replacement. Back in the lobby, Tony waited with visible anxiety. "So can we patch it?" Donovan pulled out his phone, called Sloane directly. "How's it going?" Her voice was calm, professional. "We need to replace the entire heating system. It's not just inefficient, it's dangerous. Tenants are using space heaters that could burn the place down." Silence on the other end. Donovan waited, letting her process. "How much?" He did quick calculations. Years of construction experience coming back like muscle memory. 150,000, give or take. Maybe more depending on what we find when we open the walls. More silence. Then, "Do it." "Ms. Ashford, that's a lot of money." "Get bids from 3 contractors. I want this done right and done fast. Those are people's homes, Donovan. I won't have them freezing or risking fire." She paused. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. The current system is 30 years past its lifespan. It's failing. It's only a matter of time before something catastrophic happens." "Then do it. That's why I hired you, to tell me what actually needs to be done, not what's cheapest." She hung up. Donovan looked at Tony. The property manager's face had gone pale. "Get me a list of contractors you trust. We're fixing this properly." Tony's expression shifted from anxiety to relief. "Yes, sir. Thank God. I've been worried about Mrs. Robinson for months. She's been sleeping in her coat." Donovan thought about his own nights shivering in their old apartment, choosing between heat and food. "Get me her information. I want to check on her personally. And Tony, call a supplier. I need industrial-grade space heaters delivered today. Safe ones. 1 for every unit until we can get the system replaced." Ms. Ashford approved that. Donovan pulled out his new company phone, sent a quick text. "Need to buy space heaters for tenants until system replaced. 24 units, approx $5,000. The response came in seconds. "Do it. Send me the receipt." He showed Tony the message. She approved it. That evening, Donovan was reviewing contractor bids in Sloane's home office when Amara ran in breathless. "Dad, there's people outside with cameras." He moved to the window. 3 news vans parked on the street. Reporters with microphones, photographers with long lenses. His phone buzzed. "Sloane." "Don't go outside. Don't say anything. I'm handling it." "What happened?" "Someone leaked our marriage certificate to the press, with details about your background. It's all over the news." Donovan's jaw tightened. He pulled up his phone's browser. The headlines hit like bullets. CEO's charity case, $300 woman marries homeless vet. Sterling Properties heiress weds security guard in shocking union. Marriage of convenience, age gap, race raise questions. There were photos, Him signing the eviction notice, Marcus Webb had sold that image. Pictures of their old apartment building, speculation about his military record. The shame was overwhelming, hot and thick in his throat. "Dad," Amara's voice was small. "Are you okay?" He forced his face into calm, forced his breathing steady. "I'm fine, baby. This is just people being nosy. It'll blow over." But when he had to take Amara to school the next morning, reporters swarmed, microphones shoved in his face, questions shouted over each other. "Mr. Gaines, did you marry for money? How does it feel to be a kept man? What about the age difference?" Donovan put his hand on Amara's shoulder, guided her through the crowd. His face was absolutely calm, military bearing, shoulders squared. He didn't say a word, didn't acknowledge them. One reporter grabbed his arm. The contact triggered something. Years of combat training. Donovan's body shifted automatically, not aggressive, but controlled. Ready. Something in his eyes made the reporter step back fast. They made it to the car. Amara was shaking. Why are they being so mean? Because they don't understand baby, and people fear what they don't understand. At school, other parents stared, whispered. One mother pulled her child away when Amara approached. His daughter walked into the building with her head down, shoulders hunched. That night, Sloane came home looking exhausted. She found Donovan in the study staring at his laptop. More articles, more speculation. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I never thought I should have anticipated this." "It's not your fault." "It is, actually. I knew this would be public eventually. I just hoped we'd have more time." She sat down across from him. "My board is concerned. They're worried about reputation damage, about whether my judgment is compromised." Donovan closed the laptop. "Do you want out? We can end this. I'll sign whatever you need." "What? No!" Sloane looked shocked. "Donovan, I don't care what they think. I care about you and Amara, about what we're building here. I'm a spectacle, a charity case. That's how they see me." "Then they're idiots." Her voice was fierce. "You've done more real work in a week than most of my executives do in a month. You identified a critical safety issue. You're saving tenants from potential disaster. That's not charity. That's competence." She leaned forward. "Let them talk. Let them speculate. We know the truth. That's what matters." Day 20. Bradford's challenge. Bradford Whitmore appeared at the Pilsen building unannounced. Donovan was on the third floor reviewing HVAC schematics with the lead contractor when the COO walked in. 62 years old, silver hair, expensive suit, authority radiating from every pore. "Who authorized a $200,000 expense?" Bradford's voice carried down the hallway. Tony looked panicked. The contractor started gathering his tools. Donovan walked out calmly, hands relaxed at his sides, shoulders back. "I did, as operations director." Bradford's eyes swept over him, dismissive, contemptuous. "You're a security guard playing dress-up, Mr. Gaines. You don't have authority to approve major capital expenditures." "I have full authority over property operations. Ms. Ashford made that clear." Donovan pulled out his phone, showed Bradford the text chain. Sloane's explicit approval. Bradford's face tightened. "This building doesn't generate enough revenue to justify. This building houses 24 families." Donovan's voice stayed level, calm, including a 76-year-old woman who's been sleeping in her coat for 6 months. The heating system is 30 years past code. It's a fire hazard and a liability. He handed Bradford a document folder. "Here's the structural assessment, code violations, safety risk analysis, cost-benefit projection showing that tenant retention will offset the expense within 18 months. Bradford opened the folder. His expression shifted from contempt to surprise to something like grudging respect. The documents were professional, detailed, the work of someone who knew what they were doing. "This is actually solid work. Thank you." Donovan kept his face neutral. but inside satisfaction bloomed. Bradford looked at him differently now. Not quite respect, but no longer dismissal. "I'll be watching you, Gaines. I expect nothing less." After Bradford left, the contractor let out a low whistle. "Man, you didn't even blink." "No point in blinking when you're right." That Sunday, Eleanor Ashford arrived for dinner in a town car. 83 years old, white hair perfectly styled, wearing pearls that probably cost more than a car. She moved slowly but with absolute dignity. Sloan had warned Donovan. "My mother is old Chicago money. She has particular ideas about appropriate matches." Translation: "She's going to judge the hell out of you." Eleanor sat in the formal dining room like a queen holding court. Her eyes, sharp despite her age, studied Donovan with surgical precision. "So, you're the man my daughter married?" "Yes, ma'am." "Sit. Tell me about yourself, Mr. Gaines." Donovan sat. Amara pressed close to his side, nervous. "I served in the Marines for 12 years. Got injured and was discharged. Struggled for a while after that. Ms. Ashford found me and made a proposition that benefited us both." "How delicate." Eleanor's eyes glittered. "She married you to save you." "Mother," Sloane's voice carried warning. "She married me to save herself." Donovan interrupted calmly. "She was grieving Julian and needed family. I needed resources to care for Amara. We helped each other." Eleanor studied him for a long moment. "You're honest. I appreciate that. Most men would lie or posture." She gestured around the brownstone. "Do you know when this house was built?" 1897, Donovan said. "Original post and beam construction. The foundation's limestone, typical for that era. They renovated it in the 1960s. You can see where they modified the load-bearing walls for the open kitchen concept." Eleanor's eyebrows rose. "You know architecture." "Some. Enough to appreciate good bones when I see them." Amara spoke up suddenly. "Daddy knows everything about buildings." "Not everything," Donovan said quietly. "Just what I need to." Eleanor looked at Sloane, then back at Donovan. "Interesting." The dinner continued. Eleanor asked sharp questions. Donovan answered honestly, no embellishment, no deflection. By the time dessert arrived, something had shifted. "Mr. Gaines," Eleanor said finally, "I won't pretend I understand my daughter's choices. A marriage of convenience seems cold to me." She set down her fork. "But I've watched Sloane grieve for 2 years. I've watched her become a shell of herself. And today, sitting in this room with you and your daughter, I see life in her eyes again." Her gaze was direct, assessing. "So whatever this arrangement is, it's doing something right. I'm trying my best, ma'am. See that you continue to do so. Sloane is precious to me. If you hurt her, I won't, not intentionally. And if I do accidentally, I'll make it right." Eleanor nodded, satisfied. "Then we'll get along fine." Bradford Whitmore sat in his corner office on the 43rd floor and made a phone call. "I need deep background on someone. Donovan Gaines, former military. I want everything. Service record, employment history, financial records, anything that doesn't add up." The private investigator's voice crackled through the speaker. "How deep do you want me to go?" "All the way. I don't care what it costs." Bradford hung up, stared out at the Chicago skyline. Something about Donovan Gaines didn't fit. Security guards didn't produce structural assessments like that. They didn't speak with that kind of quiet authority. They didn't have the technical knowledge to redesign HVAC systems. There was a story there. Bradford intended to find it. 5 days later, the preliminary report arrived. Subject Donovan James Gaines, military service, USMC, 2009-2023, combat engineer, education records, sealed employment, significant gaps. Last registered employment, night security. $15 hour legal discharge, circumstances unclear. Rumors of disciplinary action, financial, multiple medical bankruptcies, debt exceeding $200K. Notes. Subject has sealed records. Military discharge details classified. Recommend deeper investigation. Bradford smiled. Sealed records meant secrets. Secrets meant leverage. Day 38 to 48. The breadcrumb trail. Over the next 10 days, evidence accumulated like snow. At a retail property electrical inspection, the city inspector kept deferring to Donovan's expertise. They spent 20 minutes discussing code compliance, wiring loads, grounding systems. "You sure you're not a licensed electrician?" the inspector asked. "Just learned in the field," Donovan replied. At another site, he sketched modifications to a support beam showing stress cracks. The structural engineer hired for the job looked at the drawing and went pale. This is exactly what I was going to propose. The load calculations, the reinforcement pattern. How did you? Common sense, mostly." Donovan's phone rang one afternoon. Shayna, his sister. Sloan answered by accident. Donovan had left his phone on the kitchen counter. "Is my brother doing okay?" "Really? He's doing very well. Why do you ask?" "Because he's using the skills again. He swore he'd left all that behind after what happened." "What skills?" Silence. Then, "Never mind. Just take care of him, okay? He doesn't let people see when he's struggling." Late one night, Sloan passed Donovan's room. The door was open. He sat on the bed, trembling. Nightmare, his face covered in sweat. She didn't go in, gave him privacy, but she heard him whisper, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." The voice of a man haunted by decisions made under fire. The next day, organizing Donovan's office space to help him, Sloan found the textbook, hidden in the bottom drawer, Structural Analysis and Design of Buildings, MIT Press. The inside cover had a name written in faded ink. Donovan J. Gaines, class of 2011. She stood there holding it for a long time. Then she kept looking, found more. A citation for academic excellence, a research paper on blast-resistant structures published in the Journal of Structural Engineering. A graduation photo, Donovan in full dress uniform, much younger, receiving his diploma. And underneath it all, the military file she'd obtained during her initial investigation but hadn't fully processed. Captain Donovan James Gaines, Combat Engineer Officer, Bronze Star Medal for Valor, Purple Heart, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Bachelor of Science, Civil Engineering, 2011. ROTC Scholarship, Concurrent Service, 2007-2011. Commissioned as second lieutenant upon graduation. Resigned commission following refusal of direct order during Operation Enduring Freedom Incident Report. Captain Gaines disobeyed evacuation order to secure civilian structure during enemy siege. Actions resulted in preservation of 47 Afghan civilians and 3 U.S. personnel, including Corporal Julian Ashford. Recommended for court-martial by commanding officer, subsequently dismissed upon review. Officer permitted to resign with honors. Note: Captain Gaines sustained severe spinal injury during incident. Medical discharge recommended. Officer refused. Continued service for 18 additional months before accepting separation. Psychological evaluation 2023. Severe PTSD. Recommended treatment. Long-term therapy, possible medication. Patient struggles with survivor guilt regarding casualties in Afghanistan. Professional engineering practice not recommended until psychological clearance obtained. Sloan read it 3 times. Each time the words rearranged her understanding of the man living in her house. MIT, Captain, Bronze Star, Combat Engineer Officer. The man working as her operations director had a degree in structural engineering from one of the best schools in the country. He'd been a decorated officer. He'd saved her son's life and 47 others by disobeying orders. And then PTSD had taken it all away. Find what you were looking for. Donovan stood in the doorway. His voice was calm, but his eyes showed hurt. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I saw the folder and I—" "You wanted to know who you'd really married. Why didn't you tell me?" Donovan walked to the window, looked out at the city spreading below them. "Because I needed you to see who I am now, not who I was." "Donovan, you have a degree from MIT. You're a decorated combat officer. You saved Julian's life. You could be—" "I'm a man with PTSD who couldn't hold down a normal job." His voice was quiet, factual. "Those credentials don't matter if I can't show up for Amara every day. They matter to me." "Why?" Sloan stood, moved closer. "Because you let me believe you were just some guy with construction experience. You let Bradford humiliate you at that meeting. You could have shut him down with 2 words. MIT graduate. And what would that have proven?" Donovan turned to face her. "That I have a piece of paper that I earned a medal." He tapped his temple. The man who earned those things broke Sloan. He couldn't handle seeing children die, couldn't sleep without nightmares, couldn't function in civilian life. His voice cracked slightly. "I spent 2 years rebuilding myself into someone who could be a father, someone who could work, someone who could contribute." He met her eyes. "I don't need credentials to prove my worth. I need to show up, do the work, be there when Amara needs me." Sloan felt tears on her face. "You are the most remarkable man I've ever met. I'm just a man who's trying his best. That's what makes you remarkable." They stood there, 2 people who'd started as strangers, who'd built something neither expected. "Can I ask you something?" Sloan's voice was soft. "Anything. Will you tell me about it? About what happened in Afghanistan, about Julian?" Donovan was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. "Yeah, I think I'm ready for that." They sat together as afternoon light faded, and Donovan Gaines, for the first time since Lisa died, opened the locked box where he kept his worst memories. He told Sloan about the convoy, the IED, the fire, Julian trapped in the burning vehicle, the orders to pull back, enemy contact imminent, and his decision to go back anyway. "I got Julian out first, then Corporal Hayes, then Private Martinez. The Humvee exploded 30 seconds after I pulled Martinez clear." His voice was steady, controlled. "Command wanted to court-martial me for disobeying orders. Said I endangered the whole unit. But the civilians there was a building, 47 people inside, mostly women and children. Enemy fighters were using it as cover." He looked at his hands. "I convinced my CO to hold position. We secured the building, got everyone out. Cost us 18 hours we couldn't afford, delayed the whole operation." "But you saved them." "Yeah, I saved them." His voice went flat. 3 days later, another convoy hit an IED on the road we should have been on if we'd followed the original timeline. 7 Marines died, good men, friends. "That wasn't your fault, wasn't it?" Donovan's eyes were distant. "I changed the plan, delayed the operation. Those men died because I chose 47 civilians over mission parameters. You chose to save everyone you could. I chose which lives mattered more." Sloan reached across, took his hand. "You chose humanity over orders. That's not wrong, Donovan. That's courage." The people calling me a hero weren't at the funerals. They sat in silence, the weight of old grief filling the room. Finally, Sloan spoke. "Thank you for telling me, for trusting me with this. You're my wife. Even if it's just on paper, you should know who I really am." "I know who you are," Sloan said quietly. "You're a man who saves people, who shows up, who keeps promises even when it costs him everything." She squeezed his hand. "That's the man I'm honored to be partners with." Donovan looked at her, really looked, saw the woman who'd walked into his life and offered him impossible salvation, who'd stood by him through media attacks and boardroom challenges, who'd given his daughter a home and a future. "I'm developing feelings I didn't plan for," he said quietly. Sloane's breath caught. "What kind of feelings?" "The kind that make this more than a business arrangement. Donovan, I know it's not what we agreed to. I know it complicates everything, but I can't help it." He stood, started to leave. "I understand if you want to renegotiate, if this changes things." "Wait." Sloane stood too, moved closer. "I have feelings too, feelings that terrify me." Her voice shook slightly. "I thought I was done with love, thought that chapter closed when my first husband died, but you—" She touched his face gently. "You've woken something in me I thought was dead." They stood inches apart, two broken people who'd found each other in desperation, who'd built something real from a practical arrangement. "What do we do?" Donovan whispered. "We take it slow. We figure it out together. What if we ruin what we've built? What if we don't try and spend the rest of our lives wondering?" Sloane leaned in, kissed him softly. It was tentative, questioning, a beginning, not a conclusion. When they pulled apart, both had tears in their eyes. "I haven't kissed anyone since my first husband died," Sloane said. 15 years. How does it feel? Like coming home?" They held each other as evening settled over Chicago. The city lights began to glow like embers. Traffic sounds drifted up from 43 floors below. Two people choosing to risk their hearts one more time. And in that moment, Donovan Gaines felt something he hadn't felt since Lisa died. Not just hope. Love. Chapter 5. The Crisis Day 55. The emergency. Donovan was in the home office reviewing quarterly reports when his phone rang. Unknown number. "This is Gaines." "Mr. Gaines, this is Rita Chen, City Building Inspector. We have a situation at Sterling Tower." Sterling Tower. The flagship property. 40 stories of office space in the Loop. 300 tenants. The crown jewel of Sloane's portfolio. "What kind of situation?" "Structural emergency. Our sensors are showing critical stress in the foundation supports. I'm recommending immediate evacuation and possible condemnation." Donovan's blood went cold. Condemnation. "That building was inspected 6 months ago." "I know, but the readings we're getting now, Mr. Gaines, I can't in good conscience let people stay in a building that might collapse." "I'm on my way." He called Sloane next. She was in a meeting downtown. "How bad?" Her voice was tight. "Bad. City's talking condemnation. If they red tag that building, it'll cascade. Banks will call loans. Insurance premiums will spike. The board will use it as ammunition." She was thinking like a CEO, even in crisis. "Bradford's been circling. This is exactly the kind of disaster he's waiting for." "Let me see the building first. Maybe there's something they're missing." "Donovan, you're not a licensed—" "I know what I am." His voice was calm, steel underneath. "Trust me." Silence. Then, "I do. Call me as soon as you know something." Sterling Tower rose like a glass and steel monument to ambition. Red cones blocked the entrance. 2 fire trucks stood ready. Police had cordoned off the sidewalk. Donovan showed his company ID to the officer at the barrier. "I'm Operations Director for Sterling Properties. Inspector Chen called me." Rita Chen was 45, Chinese-American, wearing a hard hat and carrying a tablet full of readings that made her face look grave. She met him in the lobby where 20 officials and engineers stood in tense clusters. "Mr. Gaines, thank you for coming." She pulled up the data. "We're seeing displacement in the foundation supports, 6 millimeters over the last 72 hours, accelerating." 6 millimeters. In construction terms, that was catastrophic. "What's the current engineer saying?" "He can't explain it. The building was sound 6 months ago, but these readings don't lie." A man in an expensive suit approached. Older, gray hair, eyes that had seen 1,000 buildings. Richard Morrison, structural engineering. I've been over every inch of the original plans. The foundation should be solid for another 50 years, but the sensors are picking up movement. The elevator opened. Bradford Whitmore stepped out with 2 other board members. His face showed calculated concern. He found Sloane standing near the windows staring at the city she'd built her empire in. Sloane, I came as soon as I heard. Bradford, I have to be direct. He lowered his voice, but not enough. Others could hear. This is catastrophic. The bank will call our loans. Insurance will skyrocket. We're looking at potential bankruptcy. He paused for effect. I'm prepared to make an offer. I'll buy the company at 40% current valuation. Take the liability off your hands. You walk away with enough to retire comfortably. Sloane turned slowly. You want me to sell you my life's work for 40 cents on the dollar? I want to save what can be saved before this destroys everything. Bradford glanced at Donovan, who stood near the engineers, listening, processing. Your husband's dramatic gestures won't fix structural failure. This requires real expertise. Sloane's voice went cold. Get out of my building, Bradford. It won't be your building much longer. Donovan walked over. Calm, measured. Let me see the building. Give me 2 hours. Bradford laughed. Actually laughed. And what exactly will a security guard do that licensed engineers can't? I'll look. Something in Donovan's voice made Rita Chen pause. What's your background, Mr. Gaines? Does it matter? Humor me. Donovan met her eyes, steady, certain. I know buildings. Rita studied him for a long moment, then nodded. 2 hours, but I'm not delaying the evacuation order. 20 officials, 3 news crews, and Bradford Whitmore watched as Donovan Gaines walked through Sterling Tower like a man reading a language only he could see. He moved floor by floor, touching support columns, listening to the building, his hands running over concrete and steel with a familiarity that made engineers uncomfortable. In the basement, he studied the foundation. The sensor arrays, the data feeds. He pulled out his phone, started taking photos, measurements, notes that meant nothing to anyone watching. 90 minutes in, he asked for the original blueprints. They spread them across a table in the lobby. 40-year-old plans, yellowed paper, detailed specs from an era when buildings were over-engineered for safety. Donovan studied them in silence, his finger tracing load paths, support structures, foundation design. Then he picked up his phone, called a number. This is Donovan Gaines. I need to speak with Professor Martinez. Yes, I'll hold. He put it on speaker. A voice crackled through. Older, Spanish accent, authority. Donovan, Dios mío, is this really you? Professor, I need your expertise on something. After 12 years of silence, you call for work advice. The voice held warmth, affection. You are my best student, hijo. What do you need? Thermal expansion in post-tensioned concrete. Chicago climate. What kind of sensor drift would you expect? In what time frame? 72 hours. 6 millimeters apparent displacement. Apparent. The professor caught the word immediately. You think the sensors are wrong. I think they're measuring the wrong thing. Donovan explained the building's heating system. The unseasonably warm autumn. The concrete's thermal coefficient. Silence on the other end. Then run a differential. Factor in ambient temperature increase over the period. If I'm right, if you're right, the displacement is thermal expansion, not structural settlement. That's what I'm thinking. Donovan. The professor's voice changed. Who are these people you're with? Do they know about MIT? No, sir. Why not? Long story. When this is over, you call me. We need to talk about license reinstatement. The board would approve you tomorrow if you applied. Yes, sir. Donovan hung up. Every eye in the lobby was on him. Rita Chen spoke carefully. Who was that? As Professor Eduardo Martinez, MIT Structural Engineering Department. He published the seminal paper on thermodynamics in post-tensioned concrete systems. Richard Morrison, the consulting engineer, went pale. You're saying the foundation isn't failing. The sensors are reading thermal expansion. Donovan turned to Rita. Run a differential analysis, factor in the temperature increase over the last week. Adjust for the building's thermal mass and the concrete's expansion coefficient. He rattled off numbers from memory. Precise, technical, the language of someone who'd spent years studying exactly this. Rita typed on her tablet, running calculations, cross-referencing data. The silence stretched. Then her face changed. Oh my God! What? Bradford's voice was sharp. He's right. The displacement correlates perfectly with temperature increase. The building isn't settling, it's expanding within normal parameters. Richard Morrison grabbed the tablet. Verified. His hands shook slightly. This building is sound. Completely sound. A reporter from the Tribune pushed forward. Mr. Gaines, how did you know that? Are you an engineer? Donovan's expression didn't change. I know buildings. Rita Chen wasn't letting it go. No, someone who knows buildings doesn't cite thermal coefficients from memory, doesn't call MIT professors for consultation. Who are you? The moment hung there. Bradford watching, Sloan watching, cameras recording. Donovan could have deflected, could have stayed humble, but these people had nearly condemned a sound building, nearly destroyed Sloan's company, nearly put 300 tenants out of work. I graduated MIT in 2011, structural engineering, spent 12 years as a combat engineer officer in the Marine Corps. I know buildings because I've built them, inspected them, and sometimes had to bring them down. The lobby erupted. Richard Morrison stepped forward, hand extended. Captain Gaines, I read your thesis on blast-resistant structures when I was getting my master's. Changed how we approach protective design. That was a long time ago. Good work doesn't age. Rita Chen was shaking her head in disbelief. Why are you working as an operations director? You could be running any engineering firm in the city. I am where I need to be. Bradford's face had gone from smug to ashen. A news camera caught everything. The headline would write itself, Homeless Vet Saves Flagship Building Reveals Secret Past as MIT Engineer. Day 60. The board meeting. The boardroom on the 43rd floor. We've returned to the cold open. 12 board members around the mahogany table, cameras in the corner, Bradford standing with his presentation loaded. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to address a crisis of leadership. Donovan stood near the window, shoulders back, calm. Bradford clicked through slides. The marriage, the homeless veteran, the sealed records. I move for an immediate vote of no confidence. This time we see what happens next. Sloan stood. Before any vote, I'd like to present the board with relevant information. She pulled up her own presentation, clicked to the first slide. Sterling Properties Portfolio Performance, last 60 days. Since Donovan Gaines became operations director, we've seen a 23% increase in tenant retention, 97% satisfaction across all properties, $4.2 million in prevented liability costs. Click. Pilsen Building Case Study. Mr. Gaines identified a critical safety hazard that previous managers missed for 6 months. His intervention prevented potential fire, saved lives, and improved property value by 15%. Click. Sterling Tower incident video footage from 2 days ago. Donovan explaining the thermal expansion to Rita Chen. The inspector's face when she realized he was right. Mr. Gaines prevented the wrongful condemnation of our flagship property, saving this company from catastrophic loss. She looked directly at Bradford. The question isn't whether my husband is qualified. The question is whether this board has the wisdom to recognize competence when they see it. Eleanor Ashford, 83 years old and the largest shareholder, spoke for the first time. I've been on this board for 40 years. I've seen executives with Harvard MBAs run companies into the ground. I've seen men with perfect credentials destroy everything they touch. She looked at Donovan. This man saved my grandson's life in Afghanistan. He saved my daughter from loneliness, and he just saved this company from ruin. Her voice carried absolute authority. I don't care if he was homeless. I don't care if he worked security. He has produced results. That's what matters. She turned to Bradford. Now, Mr. Whitmore, would you like to explain why our forensic audit discovered $2 million in unauthorized transfers from company accounts to your personal holdings? The room went silent. Bradford's face drained of color. I don't know what you're... Donovan found the discrepancies during his property reviews. Eleanor's voice was ice. He flagged them for investigation. The FBI is waiting in the lobby. Security opened the doors. 2 federal agents entered. Bradford Whitmore, you're under arrest for embezzlement and fraud. The cameras caught everything. Chapter 6, Resolution. The board vote was anticlimactic after Bradford's arrest. 7-4 in favor of retaining Sloan as CEO, Donovan as operations director. The partnership validated, but Donovan didn't feel victorious. He stood in the empty boardroom after everyone left, staring out at Chicago. Sloan found him there. We won. Did we? His voice was quiet. Bradford's going to prison. That doesn't feel like winning. He stole from this company, from employees, from people who trusted him. I know, but I remember what it's like to make bad choices under pressure, to watch everything fall apart. Sloan moved beside him. You didn't steal. You didn't hurt people. You survived. Barely. She took his hand. The difference between you and Bradford is simple. When you had nothing, you still thought about Amara first. When he had everything, he only thought about himself. 3 months later. Winter came to Chicago with snow that turned the city clean and white. Donovan stood in the office of the Illinois Professional Engineering Board, the same office where he'd surrendered his license 4 years ago. Now the board chair handed him a certificate. Welcome back, Mr. Gaines. Your reinstatement is approved. The therapy had helped. 12 weeks of intensive work, learning to manage the nightmares, to forgive himself for the men he couldn't save. He still had PTSD. That didn't go away. But he'd learned to live with it, to function despite it. His phone buzzed. A text from Sloan. How did it go? I'm licensed again. Congratulations, partner. He smiled. Their relationship had deepened slowly. They'd moved from separate bedrooms to shared space, from business partners to something more. Not a replacement for what he'd had with Lisa. Something different. Something built on mutual respect and shared purpose. The Ashford Gaines engineering firm opened in a renovated warehouse in Pilsen. Small. Just 4 employees to start, but focused on something that mattered: affordable housing done right. Mrs. Robinson was at the ribbon cutting. Mr. Gaines, I heard you're hiring. We are. You know someone? My grandson just finished his engineering degree. Can't find work because he doesn't have experience. Donovan smiled. Tell him to come by Monday. Everyone deserves a first chance. They hired veterans with PTSD, gave them structure, purpose, a place where shaking hands and nightmares were understood. One of them was Marcus Webb, the property manager who'd leaked Donovan's eviction story 8 months ago. He showed up at the office, hat in hand. Mr. Gaines, I know I don't deserve... You need work. Yes, sir. But after what I did, everyone makes mistakes. Donovan's voice was calm, kind. Question is whether you learn from them. You willing to learn? Yes, sir. Then you start Monday, site supervisor. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. I won't let you down. I know. Amara was 10 years old now, about to turn 11, taller, confident. The courthouse was simple. Wood paneling and fluorescent lights. Judge Morrison looked over the paperwork, then at the family standing before her. Amara Gaines, do you understand what adoption means? Yes, ma'am. Her voice was clear, strong. It means Sloan becomes my mom legally. Like my first mom was my mom biologically, but both real. That's exactly right, and is this what you want? Yes, ma'am, very much. The judge smiled. Mr. Gaines, do you consent to this adoption? I do, Your Honor, completely. Ms. Ashford, do you promise to care for this child as your own? Sloane's voice shook slightly. I do, with everything I have. Then by the power vested in me by the state of Illinois, I grant this adoption. Amara Gaines Ashford, you are now officially and legally the daughter of Donovan Gaines and Sloan Ashford. She banged the gavel. Congratulations to your family! Outside the courthouse, Eleanor waited with Sergeant. Shayna had flown up from Atlanta with her family. Amara hugged everyone, then she looked at her two parents. Can I say something? Anything? Donovan said. I used to be scared all the time. Scared we'd be homeless, scared Dad would get hurt, scared I'd lose everyone like I lost Mom. Her voice was steady, mature beyond her years. But now I'm not scared, because I have two parents who show up, who keep promises, who love me. She took both their hands. That's what family really is, not blood, not legal papers, just people who choose each other every single day. The Chicago Housing Coalition held their annual gala at the Art Institute, 500 attendees. Sloan was receiving the Humanitarian Award for the Ashford Gaines Affordable Housing Initiative. She stood at the podium in a silver dress, every inch the CEO. But her speech wasn't about her. We honor credentials in our society, degrees, titles, pedigrees, and there's value in education, in training, and expertise. She paused. But we honor quiet competence far less. The person who shows up, who does the work, who delivers results without needing recognition. Her eyes found Donovan in the crowd. He sat with Amara, both in formal clothes, looking slightly uncomfortable. My husband was homeless 8 months ago, working 3 jobs, facing eviction. To most people he was invisible, disposable, just another struggling veteran. The room was silent, but he was also an MIT-trained engineer, a Bronze Star recipient, a man who saved 47 civilians under fire. He just happened to have PTSD, medical debt, and bad luck. She let that sink in. How many others like him are we overlooking? How many brilliant minds are working security or driving delivery trucks because our systems failed them? Sloan held up the award. I don't deserve this. The real honoree is in that seat next to our daughter, a man who rebuilt himself from nothing, who now helps others do the same. She looked directly at Donovan. The real victory isn't in awards or recognition. It's in showing up, every single day, for the people who count on you. The crowd rose, standing ovation. But Donovan stayed seated, calm, humble. Amara leaned over. They're clapping for you, Dad. They're clapping for something bigger than me, baby. Late spring came to Chicago with green and warmth. Donovan stood at Lisa's grave for the first time in months. The headstone was clean. Fresh flowers already there, Sloan had visited earlier in the week. He knelt on the grass. Hi, baby. The words came easier now, less painful. Amara's doing great. She's building robots, getting straight A's. She's happy, Lisa. Really happy. He traced her name on the stone. I found someone. Sloan. She's not you. Nobody could be you. But she's good. She loves Amara like her own. She loves me even with all my broken parts. The wind moved through the trees. I kept my promise. Gave Amara everything. Not just money or opportunity. Gave her a family, safety, love. He stood. I'm okay now. We're okay. And I hope that wherever you are, you're okay with that. A cardinal landed on the headstone, bright red against gray granite. Lisa had always loved cardinals. Donovan smiled. Thanks, baby, for everything you gave me, for Amara, for teaching me that love doesn't end. It just changes shape. The documentary crew filmed Donovan teaching at Harold Washington College. Introduction to Structural Engineering for Veterans met twice a week. 15 students, all former military. Donovan stood at the whiteboard explaining load calculations. The math tells you if a building will stand, but experience tells you if it will last. There's a difference. A student raised his hand, Army vet missing his left arm below the elbow. Professor Gaines, how do you handle the anxiety when you're on site and the sounds trigger you? Donovan set down the marker. I don't handle it. I manage it. Some days better than others. I have techniques, breathing, grounding, but mostly I have purpose. He gestured around the room. When I'm working on affordable housing, I'm not just building structures. I'm giving families what I almost lost: security, dignity, home. He met the student's eyes. The nightmares don't stop, but they get quieter when you're doing work that matters. Ashford Gaines had completed their 12th affordable housing project, 487 units total, built to last, designed with dignity. Amara graduated middle school at 13, 3 years after that desperate day in the diner. Top of her class, already taking high school physics. Her valedictorian speech made the local news. 3 years ago, my dad and I were about to be homeless. I wore shoes that didn't fit. I learned to be hungry quietly. She looked at her parents in the front row. Today I have a home, a family, opportunities I never imagined. But the most important thing I learned wasn't math or science. She smiled. I learned that dignity isn't something people give you. It's something you carry. My dad carried it through homelessness, through PTSD, through every challenge. Her voice strengthened, and he taught me that the best way to honor the help you receive is to help others. That's what I plan to do. Rosie's Diner, the same corner booth. Donovan Sloan and Amara sat having breakfast on a Saturday morning. Casual, comfortable, a normal family in a neighborhood diner. Rosie herself brought their food, 73 now, moving slower but still sharp. You folks came a long way from that day. Sloan smiled. We did. Y'all still happy? Donovan took Sloan's hand on the table. Natural. Easy. Yeah, we are. After Rosie walked away, Amara looked at her parents. Dad, can I ask you something? Always. If you could go back and change things, skip the struggling, skip being homeless, would you? Donovan thought about it. Really thought. No. Why not? Because the struggle taught me what matters. It brought me here, to this family, to this life. He looked at Sloan, then at Amara. The path was hard, but the destination was worth it. Sloan squeezed his hand. What about you? Donovan asked. Would you change it? Not a single moment. Sloan's voice was certain. Because every moment led to you both. Amara smiled. Then I guess we're exactly where we're supposed to be. They finished breakfast as sunlight streamed through the windows. Outside, Chicago moved and breathed. As they stood to leave, Donovan left a $100 tip under his coffee cup for the next person who needed it, the next family struggling, the next father wondering how to feed his daughter. Outside, they walked together, a family, not perfect, but real. The screen fades to text over images of Donovan teaching buildings, rising families moving into affordable housing. 5 years after that cold open board meeting, Donovan Gaines recertified 47 veterans as professional engineers. Ashford Gaines Engineering built 12 affordable housing projects housing 847 families. Amara Gaines Ashford graduated MIT at 21, with highest honors in civil engineering. Bradford Whitmore, 8 years federal prison for embezzlement. The Pilsen building became a model for sustainable, affordable housing featured in national urban planning curricula. Eleanor Ashford, at 88, became the oldest serving board member in Sterling Properties history, mentoring the next generation of leaders. Sloan and Donovan Ashford Gaines celebrated their 5th wedding anniversary surrounded by family, including 3 grandchildren. Through Shayna's family and a growing community of veterans they'd helped rebuild. The final image, the family photo on Donovan's desk. Him, Sloan, Amara, and Sargent. Smiling. Together. One final line of text appears: "Real victory isn't revenge, real victory is showing up."